हाँ बोलो ना, opportunity को हाँ बोलो, things will happen. A true artist does not care for any opinion. Do not mistake your net worth with your self-worth. This culture of winning, this culture of hustling, it's too much is made out of it in these last couple of years. Clarity is something which we very often lack in communication. We do communication to fill space. Doing things by habit is very often what makes great creators.
Roshan Abbas is the clear-cut and quintessential example of a multi-hyphenate. He's a storyteller, he's an entrepreneur, he's a performer, he's all forms of creative and business and everything else wrapped in one. He's been one of my strongest mentors through my years, and he's my guest today on Take a Pause. Before you go there, I want to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon straight to my chat with Roshan. I was thinking about how to start this podcast because I feel every conversation I've had with you could have been a podcast.
Very true.
And considering how long I've known you, that is a lot of podcasts. That's not one season. That is multiple seasons of podcasts that have happened. But there's a question I always want to ask you. What is your earliest memory of creativity that inspired you?
I think Lucknow, because that's where I'm from. And every Sunday for me used to be something I used to look forward to because my dad used to take me and my sister to all of these excursions. And I remember most of them. I remember the first time we went to the museum and we went through the whole section which had coins, like old coins and things. So something about the way my father used to talk about those objects, he gave life to all of them by telling us the stories behind them. And I think that is one memory that I definitely have. Of course, being in a small Montessori school in the beginning, it was a school where we used to do lots of activities. So, you were playing, like on Janmashtami, you were enacting the whole jhanki. On Diwali, you were playing Ram, and stuff. So, and we would do all costumes, and then you would sit at home and make your arrows and bows and all that stuff. So, I think that doing a lot of these things these are my two creative early memories.
So then, would you say that those almost like gave you that very early spark? Because for me, you're the person I know who has the true plethora of creative interests, right? There is no area which has a creative connection which is not something that you are deeply into. Like I can pick any and there is a level of interest there. So the reason I ask you the question is that would you say that would you say it's inborn, or would you say that initial part really helped frame saying, okay, I want to explore every single avenue?
No, I think there's something that our common friend Amit Verma says, which I love, and it's also from something which he had heard, which says that nature gives you the knob and nurture turns them. I think I'm curious by nature, but I think my father taking us to all of those things, and I mean, even if it was going to an old ruin like the Residency, which is a place where the first Battle of Independence technically, or the mutiny was happening, and in that telling us of what happened, and do you know that they did this, and there's a tunnel from here which goes to your school. I think just that inherent curiosity and the fact that when it is satiated, इतना कुछ जानने को मिलता है, and वो आपका एक घड़ा भरता रहता है, और फिर अगर घड़ा भरता रहता है तो फिर उससे देने में भी मजा आता है. So I think it's just that it's a constant process of filling and sharing and filling and sharing, which is what I love to do.
At which point did that curiosity become key? This is not just a thing I'm curious about. पूरी लाइफ इसी में निकल जाएगी.
I think जब आपके प्रोफेशन से आप पैसे बनाने लगते हैं, एक्चुअली अपने पैशन से जब आप पैसे बनाने लगते हैं वो प्रोफेशन बनने लगता है. When I got that first indication, I remember I was on radio as a student in school, and then when you get that first check, right, and it's a 50 rupee check, but you're suddenly like, oh my god, I just did what I love to do, which is speak. And that made me money. So I think when that intersection starts happening between your passion, between what people love, between what pays you, I mean, your own internal ikigai, as it was, that's something which I think I discovered very early. So in the Lucknow days only it started. When I came to Delhi, I come from a very basic middle class home. My parents are both teachers. So when I came to Delhi, while they could well afford my education, but 1,000 रुपए मिलते थे महीने के. And you've come to Delhi where there's somebody coming in from GK2 with a Mercedes, and somebody saying let's go to Ghungroos, which was the discotheque of that time. Whatever. मुझे सब कुछ नहीं, ना interest थी ना करता था. But suddenly you were like, this thing of, for a while you get up into this, oh my God, I'm caught up in this whirlwind of things that are happening. And I joined a theatre group really early in Delhi called Stage Door, which was a professional theatre group, again, which paid you. So to find at the age of 18, 19, that what you love to do is paying you, suddenly makes you believe that, hey, this curiosity which makes you inherently creative and then delivers commerce is something that I did. What Sathe always says, he says, that he said, "Tumhara left brain, right brain, bada combination mein chalta hai." But it's just that if Amir was doing a play, my mind was saying there are 626 seats in Kamani. Out of this 26, we give complimentary. 600 multiplied by X is going to be this much value per show. We paid this for the set. My mind starts working in that manner. I like even if I was here and if we had any conversation which would suddenly be about the commerce of podcasting, I'll immediately start doing the business maths. And there's nobody in my family who's ever run a business, ever. So I enjoy that fact of saying that how can one, find this intersection. And the other part of it is that identifying gaps and fitting in to find the problem solution.
Yeah,
I think I'm just a born problem solver. I love to solve problems.
Yeah.
So I guess it all sort of just combines.
I can, there is something which I don't remember we spoke about. I think the last time we did a podcast about 4 odd years ago, you and I were discussing just when I just started podcasting, to 2018. But I remember at that point of time as well to now, you don't just spot gaps, you also spot things that could be enhanced or tweaked around. And you almost make a point to send that message.
Yeah.
Like you have sent me, I think throughout as I switched from being operations, production, everything else to finding my own creator side, you'd always send me a point saying, this is what I liked, this is what I think could have been different or better. And I've always found that it's an actionable insight. A problem क्या है ना, दुनिया में बहुत लोग ज्ञान दे देते हैं, but most of the ज्ञान is very like you hear it, you have no use for it, and you go ahead. But what I've always enjoyed about the points you send across is that if you're giving me an insight, it's something which I can do something about. For you, what is an actionable insight? How do you? Because the word Gyaan is used openly. I know your famous lines which I have used openly is that Gyaan dene mein tax nahi lagta hai, which you told me years ago. But I'm like, how do you make sure that Gyaan is not just air?
You're absolutely right, because what happens is I have been part of those comatose intellectual conversations that happened at places like many festivals that are intellectual in nature, and I used to be like, "Arey yaar, baatein kuch karo, do." Don't.
There's that 3 Idiots line. But bolna kya cha rahe ho is what you end up going, because you see that going on and there's no matter there.
So you remember one of the projects that we worked together on early was when you all made those films for Think Fest.
Yes.
Where we said, when will a Think Fest be a Do Fest?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because it was just that. I loved the conversations at Think Fest. I thought it was brilliant. But to me, it is a lot of what we say gets lost in this cloud of conversation. But if there's nothing actionable out of it, it's also a big learning. As you grow older, you sometimes say maybe everything does not need to be action. But particularly if you're talking about creatives and things that can be solved, or how can you generate something which is even better, if it's not an actionable, then it becomes akin to, I'm going to use a strong phrase, mental masturbation. And I keep saying this is intellectual, but bole ja rahe ho, kare action it. Take something so that ultimately it impacted things in a different manner. Yeah. Also, I think the important thing about doing is this belief in saying that when you see things being done, it can either be good or it can be bad. But if you will never take that step, then it's always a question mark, right? But so do it. Yes, you may fail, Nowadays, I in fact don't even use that word. I say, then you may stumble. But it's fine. You'll stumble across something better. That's what I keep. So I think I'm a big believer in. I have a bias for action. I'm a big believer in action. The only places where this does not apply is sometimes in relationships. So my daughter the other day, she came and we were talking about something and I was like, "What happened? What happened?" She said, "Just hug me." And I'm very uncomfortable with these kind of things. I'm like, "Oh, I'm hugging her. Does she need something? Is there some problem? Should I solve it?" And I was like, "Okay, just calm down." And I just realized it was just the need of physical comfort, which too was an action, but it doesn't need to have a protracted action behind it. So those are things that I'm a little uncomfortable with sometimes. But otherwise, in most other things, I have a bias for action.
It's interesting you gave that relationship one, right? My sister once told me this, that I'm not calling you for advice. I'm just calling you to tell you what's going on.
Correct.
If I want advice, I'll ask for it. Which I thought was an important point, because I think the tendency is that, okay, you got to, have something to say. And I feel in general in the world today, everybody has almost this need to have something to say, right? You go on social media, you have thought leader plastered on every second bio there. And it keeps coming back to saying, is what you're saying actually valuable for someone, or are you just saying this for your own satisfaction in that sense of the word? So when you are communicating with people out there, how do you do that in a way that on one point is the point you want to make coming across, but secondly, it's something which they can actually use in their lives? And how do you get that communication right?
So even when I used to send you those messages, I used to follow a technique. I read prolifically on things or whatever, and because of speaking and coaching people in public speaking or storytelling, etc., I realized that very often I need to give feedback. And most feedback mechanisms that we use are negative. Varun, aisa mat karo. The minute I start with that, what you hear first is the mat karo. Right? It's the no is what is heard in the thing. I was told, in fact, by a therapist at one point in time, saying very often in sentences we will turn and say, "No, it's not like that." He says people don't hear the "it's not like that," they hear the "no." Right? The technique that I genuinely say is a great technique for giving people advice or anything is called commend, recommend.
Okay.
Right? So I commend you. Varun, I love the name Take a Pause. Right? I commend you again. I love the pace at which you do this. And then offer a recommendation. Right? In that sense, you've appreciated something. The person, the first time might think, "Oh, it's just a thing." But if you appreciate another thing, which means the person that I actually listened intently and then gave a recommendation. I often try this as a technique. And I find that is when people actively respond a lot better. Again, there are times when we listen. So so very often I'm talking to someone and take off my phone and I say, "Listen, I just want to tell you I'm taking notes of what you're saying."
You're not looking away.
Right. I'm not looking away, because we have this terrible habit of you holding a phone and be like, "Ha, aur kya ho raha hai?" But that's when you are not present. Right? And I can't be cheating on you with a phone at the same time. We all do it. I'm not saying even I do it, and there are times I talk about Abba, and I'm like, "Oh," Shaheen will be like, "Don't," But try to just, if you can actively listen, which is the important thing that many people do. Because if you actively listen, the person in front also knows you are.
True.
And then if you actually, in your reply, recall something that the person has just said, again, the person feels, acknowledged, feels they were genuinely heard.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the things that I definitely try to apply.
You just mentioned that you take notes in conversations, right?
Copious notes.
Now, I know there are people who take notes in meetings, but what I've noticed, you do that in general conversation also. You kind of, Is there a technique you have in terms of, or how does that help you?
So what I try to do is that I'm looking for 2-3 things when in a conversation. Obviously, if it's a quotable quote, then I definitely immediately take it down saying, "Boss, ye to kaam aayega," right? And I mean, I do it with everyone. So with any conversation, whether it's you or GK or Zakir or anyone, I'll take that little thing because I know that this is usable. So the second is there a learning, right? I came across Now what happens is we'll forget. So every day in a conversation, you will mention a book or someone will mention a film or whatever. This is a list of go-tos. So I try to take that. So I'll look for something which is quotable. I'll look for something which is, referenceable. And I look for something which is actionable. So if these are three things that I could try and sift out of a conversation, and Tarsem, again, dear
Tarsem
friend
Mittal,
or whatever. So Tarsem does this place called All About Music, where he does a beautiful conference. We've all been there. And whenever I would host a session, he would always come and say, he says, you do one thing which most people don't do, which is that at the end of a session, you summarize, right? So do we summarize what happens? How many emails do we write which have an actionable for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Right? Or a conversation, even if we are talking about something which is, if it's just shooting the breeze, it's shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
But if you turned and said, hey, listen, let's talk about something which is to be done. I was meeting up with Kunal Kapoor on something just day before. And at the end of the meeting, I was very clear. I said, you do this, I'll do this, we'll get back in this much time.
Yeah.
It just sort of cuts away all the faff.
Yeah.
And I genuinely try and filter the faffy conversations, like the Bombay technique. Milte hain. Go catch up. When? Where? How? What for? When people ignore this, after the second time, I classify them into, that category of, this is there's a beautiful book which I had come across. I don't even know how it was called. Confessions of a C-list Celebrity.
I love the name.
Really crazy.
Yeah.
Very funny book. In that, the guy describes going to a party in London, because it's based in London. And he says that, at these parties, very often, people will come out and they'll say, man, and they'll give you a big hug. So they're actually hugging you because they're looking over your shoulders to see if there's someone more famous for them to meet. Right? And this is a Bombay phenomenon. Yeah. We've seen this very often.
I'm guilty as charged of doing this too. Many people saying, we should catch up soon is actually a statement I make very often. Which...
But देखो, मैं कह रहा हूँ कि अगर नहीं करना है, मत बोलो. It's difficult.
In my defense, I feel I actually intend to, but I forget to actually action it ever. But I think the action is great because you're turning around and saying that. And this is so relevant to think about it. We create so many connections. Like how many followers do you have? How many connections do you have? Let's say on LinkedIn, how many subscribers, etc. How often are you building an action point to continue that chain of conversation and continue that chain of these things versus just loading up saying, I know X number of people. Because as I've gotten older, and you've seen me now for 14 odd years,
yeah.
I've realized that as much as you might want to expand the level of connections, what matters is eventually that smaller set of core people that you actually rely on. And it just makes me think about the fact that did I actually have to spend so much time connecting with all those people? You have far more connections of people in every single aspect. How do you look at that? How do you balance out the fact that there are so many people you're connected with across business, across creative pursuits, across everything, and in life in general? How does that filter work for you?
So, see the first part of what you said, which is the fact that we meet so many people, and should we? We should. Because you never know who is that hidden treasure, firstly. So, if you have the time available, meet as many people as you can. How can you place a filter? The filter is simple. On a LinkedIn, I would be getting 10 or 15 requests every day, many that I don't accept. The ones I don't accept, I filter by profile. Private banking out. Because I know the person wants to reach out saying, will you invest with us? Will you do the following or whatever? One. Startup, right? Now, because our profiles say that we invest in startups, many people reach out to you. You're a magnet for those kind of people. But then filter. Okay, startup, but what kind of startup? If it's fintech, I don't know much about fintech. I'm really not interested. I invest in startups because I believe that they further what I can't do. Genuinely, I have no other reason. Or I invest because Rajesh Soni, who's a friend and a mentor in the investment space, and another couple of people, Dinesh Agarwal, etc. This group is investing, and I feel their thesis is right, and that is purely a speculative investment based on knowing those people. So you get all these kind of requests that come in. I love it when I get an email. Number one, if the email jumps out at me. I get 100 emails, a day of various kinds. I have a story. मेरे पास idea है. isko fund kar dijiye, can you give me some time, I know you're coming for this conference or whatever. Again, I'm looking for something. Number one, can that email jump out at me? Right? I mean, I often talk about this one girl called Radhika who reached out to me during the pandemic early days, and the email subject was, "You've got a happy mail." Now, it just, see, look at it, it put a smile. I read it and I was like, this is going to be a fun. And the mail had a lot of respect, which was that the person had done actual research and said, you did this and you built this with commune and you did this with your independent career. I want to take an interview. I want 30 minutes of your time. Again, very clear. Right? Clarity is something which we very often lack in communication. We do communication to fill space. Again, I look for communication that has clarity, which again is something that creatively stands out. If it's creative and it stands out, I mean, an audio engineer reached out to me once with something, but he sent me a clip. He said, this is something that I've recorded. I want you to hear it. It took me 30 seconds, but it was so good. I said, let me do it. So the first thing is, don't deny the connections. Have a base level filter, right? Grammar theek hai ki nahi hai. Sorry, And very often, we have a little bit of a bias because obviously we're English educated, but मुझे कोई हिंदी में भी लिखता है, मुझे कोई problem नहीं है.
And you also now have the tools to be able to correct that grammar.
बिल्कुल, right? So I'm just saying, have you taken enough? Like the other day, I got this email, from one of these creator networks, right? Dear Roshan, blah, 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 we love your content. It all says, we love your content. Would you like to do the following? We've got a set of women's handbags that we promote. I said, yaar, ye to cut paste hai.
What are you going to do with him?
No, because obviously they have not. They've just taken a profile of people who've got X number of followers plus, and they've sent it out.
Yeah.
The second thing in that was that where the email had to be, where the email subject was, the software had generated a dash which said insert the person's name and then something. Varun, this is for you. That the person had forgotten to fill that first part. So instead of my name, it said XX. So, again, I realized that you haven't done your basics.
Yeah.
So build that filter. Once you build these connections, again, how do you file away people's names? Now, as I've crossed the 50 mark, I've started forgetting. Right? Sometimes I look at a name, I'm like, who is this person?
I've been like that since I was 30, so I'm not blaming.
So what do I do now? I start writing niche, context kya hai? What is this person a subject expert on? What is this person going to help me with? How did I connect with this person? I need that information today. Early days I didn't, but now I do because the connections are so many.
Yeah.
Now you've got a universe filled with stars. Now comes your role, which is, by connecting these stars, what constellation can I make? That is our beauty. Today, the more you make the connections, right, the more dots they are, the more high definition the image. So the more the dots, the more the inputs, the more your contact list is huge, the more high definition your worldview is. Now you need to decide, if I connect A with B and C, it will lead to X. That is virtuous connections. Right? Just connections is, I've got 100,000 people. So what?
Yeah.
What do they do? So I'm saying, connect with as many as you can with a base filter. File them away under what they can do for you. Right? XYZ. No problem writing strategist. XYZ. Content creator. Editor. Whatever. Likh do na. File it away in a manner that you remember. It doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. But once you've done that, you'll have this. Then over a period of time, when an opportunity arises, reach out to a bunch of them. See who responds. Those who don't respond, you can file away as saying, these are not, they're known, good to know, but not useful. So then your useful circle keeps becoming smaller, and then that is the network that you really want to spend time with.
As you've spoken about all this, it keeps coming to my mind. I've always wondered this, right? Because when I look at all the things that you do, from multiple businesses, creative endeavors, personal creative projects, I've always wondered, how do you structure this? And this makes sense because at some point you are not putting all the pressure on your mind to remember everything at that instinctive moment, make those connections. You're saying, 1 second, I will systemize it. I'll put it down on paper. So I don't have to load my mind with what can be on a sheet of paper, and I can just literally focus my mind on the actual thing it has to focus on right now. Do you feel that's what a lot of creative-minded people. And I say creative mind in a slightly broader sense because I feel that people have a creative knack and an interest. Somehow look at systems like these as, this is not me being creative. I don't have to do these things. I'll outsource it to someone else. But even if you do outsource it to someone else, do you feel that to truly be a creative, to be a creator, let me use that word, you feel it's important for you to have these structures so you're not letting that be someone else's job, but it's something you actually are also in control of?
I definitely think that while this romantic notion of creators being wild and erratic, etc., is very romantic and beautiful, it's actually not true. Because habitual, doing things by habit is very often what makes great creators, right? It's this famous thing which is written by Julia Cameron in all her books and the writers, the artist's way, where she says, write 3 full pages every morning. Now, why is that? It is just so that you're in a habit of writing. I tried it. I must tell you, for about first 3 months, I wrote utter crap. But after I got the crap out, after my mind was now conditioned to know that every morning I'm going to write, my thoughts started getting structured. All the kachada came out. And then came the spark from the carburetor. Then I wrote something brilliant. Then I wrote something else. So I'm saying this waiting for inspiration to strike it can be a very big excuse at one level.
Yeah.
So doing things and doing them in some and structures, see, ultimately there has to be some structure to what you build. You might have the most amazing piece of music, but when you see they've got that little thing which goes, right? You set that little thing, right? I'm forgetting what it's called. But,
Metronome.
Metronome.
Correct,
Right?
yeah.
So you set it to a thing.
Yeah.
Then you can do your variations, but एक base बनी रहती है. वो एक important चीज है. Doing that. If you're not structured, right? And I met people who are not structured and who are brilliant, right? Hire people who are structured. Work with people who are structured. Give them that freedom to be able to bring that structure to you. Right? Very, very often in the West, there used to be this concept of having a chief of staff, right? When I first went out to hire, everybody was like, oh, I said, I'm not trying to be important. I just want someone, because I had realized then that I had too much on my plate, someone who can bring a certain amount of structure and keep me beholden to it was important. That's why I did it to a certain degree or whatever, because I realized that, I'm mostly structured, but I had too much on my plate. So it was important. And there are so many things. The best buildings have the strongest foundations. You can build anything on top of it.
Yeah.
But that foundation needs to be ठोस. वो हम नहीं करते. Every now and then when you need to, and if you need to go on a complete bender, it's fine. Go on the bender, but come back.
Yeah.
So I think that is an important thing. What you said about, that personally, I have, things that I'm invested in, I'm doing things outside or whatever. To that, what I actually do is, I do, while goal setting is something some people do, I definitely at the beginning of the year try and tell myself, so what would I want this year to be? Right? And they can be a plethora of small goals, long goals, deep goals or whatever it is, thick and thin desires, what is it? So there'll be some which will always be at the back of your mind, right? If today somebody came and said, Varun, I want you to act in a film. Now, is it at all exciting? Is it at all something you've thought of or whatever which is there? Or, sometimes it could be completely left of field.
Yeah.
But I try and define those so that then in my head, I'm able to do the quick maths of saying, this is going to take me this much time. This is going to take me this much time. This is going to take me this much time. I have over the last many years tried to prioritize this, what I call not just the work-life balance, but the 4 gradient, thing. So it's a misnomer when we've said...
Explain the 4 gradient.
Yeah. So see what happens is, there was a course that was online from a site called Simply Learn many, many years ago. And I was just trying to say, how can one be a better leader? And people don't teach you these things.
Yeah.
So I was searching and I came across this course on leadership. And one of the things it said that you will be great if you are at any level in your life, if you have 4 quadrants that are fulfilled. I was like, wow, we only heard of work life. But it said, first look at self. right? Very often we ignore the self to provide for other things. And then at some point in life, you feel cheated. मैं तो अपने लिए कुछ किया ही नहीं. I ignored myself. And if you see our parents' generation is a lot of this.
Yeah.
Right? They suddenly feel this vacuum saying, Arey, life passed me by. So there's self. There is work. Okay? This is my vocation. This is where I earn from.
Yeah.
Then there is friends and family. Right? Which is people you like to spend time with, people who you invest in, people which could be, children, wife, couple, parents, etc., great friends or whatever. And the fourth one it said is always this community. What do you do that doesn't directly impact you? It impacts everything.
Yeah.
Right? Today, if you were to do something for road safety, it's not your central personal goal.
True.
But you know that every time your child goes on that road, it impacts them. Your friends go on that road, it impacts them. You go on that road, it impacts them. Or whatever. So if you have these 4 quadrants, and if you will look at anybody's life, you will see how people move from one to the other. Right? In the initial days, it's a lot of me. Right? Because it's early days. It's all your wants, your needs or whatever. It then shifts a little focus to either a romantic relationship or friends and family who are always there. It moves to work. And in old age, very often people go, क्या होता है सत्संग में जा रहे हैं, religious हो गए हैं, suddenly योगा शुरू कर दिया, प्राणायाम शुरू हो गया है सब. पर आप ये चारों चीजें एक साथ भी तो कर सकते हैं. और अगर आप थोड़ा थोड़ा वक्त निकाल के करें, you just feel a lot more fulfilled. That's what I feel.
Interestingly, I've worked with a coach last year, and she made me do an entire purpose exercise, and I came down to 4 different purposes. And in my head, as you were saying this, I realized that each of my purposes ticks
Aligns,
one of those 4. I mean, it wasn't the way we looked at it when we built it, but it makes total sense to me now. Because then you're taking care of all sides of you. Have no, I mean, you'll always have regrets, but you will not have a deeper regret that one part has been ignored over the other. And do you feel that's what often pulls people back from doing too many things, trying too many things? Because one second, if I do too much, I will end up ignoring the basics.
No, I think what happens very often is that, see, we are blessed to be doing something we love.
Yeah.
Right? I once walked into an automobile company, Japanese automobile company's office, and I saw a rows upon rows of blue shirted people sitting on I broke into a sweat. I said, my God, अगर मेरी जिंदगी ये होती तो क्या होता? So firstly, if you're doing what you love, just be grateful and, just be grateful.
Yeah.
We forget to be that. Shaheen actually reminds me a lot of this because she's majorly into this whole thing about, of manifestation and all,
And Shaheen, for context, everyone is
my better half.
Better half, and in many ways, the balancing act.
Absolutely the balancing act. Absolutely also the glue in many ways, and somebody who has a big reality check on things. I get sometimes taken into my flights of creative fancy. Which is why I said sometimes you go on a creative bender and you're brought back to reality and you need that person, right? It's important to have. Now, what happens is that we are doing what we do, but very often people fill their day with things that are of no consequence so that they don't have the time to think and sit back and say, am I really doing what I do? Do I love what I'm doing? What was the pandemic? The pandemic was a 2-year pause in our lives.
Yeah.
And what happened? I'm going to meetings now where people are saying, please tell me a way to bring my workforce back to work. They don't want to come.
Yeah.
Right? I read a brilliant article which said, is this the ambitionless generation? And it wasn't said in a negative manner. It says, we've been brought up on this diet of ambition. CEO, nahi banna. Nahi banna. Somebody says, I just want to chill.
Yeah.
Now we will turn and say, what are you saying? How can you want to chill? My son said it before going to college. I mean, I was about to give him a daddy lecture. And he stopped and said, Dad, you guys have fucked up the world enough. Can I have some years of just having fun? I looked at him and said, you know what? Do what you want. And he had a bit of fun. He had a bit of his crisis. But now he's found his rhythm. He's writing his films. He's making his shorts. He's happy. He's, and every now and then in a conversation, Dad, 2 years, I'm telling you, I'll make you proud. I said, no. I'm already very proud. Right? Or my daughter's 15 and last year when she sat and said, I want to do musical theatre. I said, okay, beta, let me tell you, I've done theatre all my life. One part. I said, you'll be very satisfied but you won't make money. So I can tell you, theatre does not make money. You know, there's a brilliant line of Broadway which turns and says, you can't make a living, but you can make a killing. Right? There'll be one Lion King that will make you tons of money, $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
Everything else will tank in 6 months or stay limping along or whatever. So that's the life you want to choose. Are you okay with it? And if that's what you want, if you want to be on stage and perform and that's what's going to give you the joy every night, so be it.
Yeah.
Right? That's important. So, you know, sorry, I'm just answering you what you said in a slightly roundabout manner.
No, please go on.
But it's just that you know, that people, when you said, oh, they, you know, they've got so many things that they're doing or whatever, very often we fill our days because we are so uncomfortable with the silence of self. Right? When you sit by yourself sometimes and you just think, where am I in life? What am I doing? Is this what I really want to do? Day before, I had one of the best days. I watched 8 episodes of Ted Lasso, one after the other. But I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And I thankfully have reached a stage in life where I can afford to do it. Right? Last night, I wanted to have a chat with ChatGPT on something fun. I was on it for 1 hour. It was great fun. Right? I mean, I can see that it's a learning model. It's learning. It's becoming better as it goes down. But I mean, it's interesting. It's curious. Do what you do. But find those little moments. And I'm saying this today. शाहरुख खान ने एक इंटरव्यू में बहुत बड़ी बात बोली थी, कहता है कि पैसा कमाने के बाद बड़ा आसान होता है कहना कि पैसे की जरूरत नहीं होती. ठीक है. Thankfully, you and I are at a stage where we've done well for ourselves. You know, I mean, you guys built a brilliant company. You know, you sold it, you nurtured it and carried it through with Pooja, with Rohit, with you and the brilliant team at Glitch, which has always been there. Now you have a space where you can look back and say, you don't need to work if you want to today. You're doing stuff that you love.
Yeah.
It's a rare, rare gift, Varun.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, honestly, when I see you with the family and everything or whatever, etc., I genuinely feel that it's a blessing.
Yeah.
And we all have it, right? I mean, I'm 10 years ahead, but it's just...
You went through that cycle 10 years before.
10 years back. So.
No, and thank you for saying that. Thank you for being part of that entire journey for Glitch
absolutely.
during that
It's
entire
a pleasure
period, right?
sitting on the sidelines.
You know, and because you mentioned it, I also believe that as much as we are saying, you know, you've got to plan your life, you've got to go towards things, do a certain way. There are moments that happen to you where you make certain choices or choices are made towards you that you need to be able to spot and take a call on.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met you, and this is a story to be told, right? I was in Symbiosis, me and Rohit were in class. You'd come in to do a workshop for our class, and you gave us this workshop where you, in a day, you made us go through the cycle of what any TV show would go through, which is come up with the idea, you were being the channel, you would change the brief, you would add in a brand integration, add in a host. And I remember the show we had pitched was called
Oh my God.
English Babu Desi
Game. What a beautiful
right?
idea.
And that whole thing happened. I remember meeting you then. And then I also famously joined your company Encompass right after
I
college.
want to shoot the person because whom you left, but anyways.
And then I ran away in a week because of people who shall not be mentioned on this.
He who shall not
be mentioned on this podcast. And then years later, a project we did for your company Encompass, which a friend of ours was not doing because he said he didn't want to work on the weekend, ended up being something that you saw and said, I want to meet the guys who made this. And
Correct.
And you, me and Rohit meet, and we're like, you connected us back to English Babu Desi Game and me running away. But that led to so many more things. It led to you investing in us. You know, you were our first investor, and then we've done so many cycles together. But for me, those two pieces of you doing that workshop in college to that person's job, I don't think we spotted those, but I feel that those calls happen to you throughout your life, and that's what leads you to do whatever you want to do. So my long-winded this thing is because we can't expect everything to be planned. There is serendipity.
Exactly. But unless you do X number of things, see, I'll give you an example. Teaching, when I used to tell people at Encompass to go and teach, my partner and many other people say, what a waste of time. And I used to say, if you want to hire the best, go teach. Because that is where the next set of people are. I have always taught. Even today, I got a letter the other day saying, Xavier, yes, I'll be given, but your time is worth. I said, no. My time is worth nothing if, I'm just sitting by myself for that 1 hour and I have the time available, but if I interact with 20 people, there's something I'll come across, right? So, firstly, going out and saying yes to many things, right? It's very, very important. There's a Mark Burnett who, made the Survivor series.
So, Apprentice, everything else, yeah.
Supremely talented. His book was called Jump In. I always remember that, just that line, jump in. हाँ बोलो ना, opportunity को हाँ बोलो, things will happen. मैंने हाँ बोला symbiosis पर. I've taught at symbiosis for that year, even before, later, taught at multiple other institutes. I found my best people from there. Because in that place, there was something that happened, whether it was the chemistry, whether it was the ideas working together. But something remained with you and something remained with me.
Yeah.
Which brought you to Encompass, didn't work out. After a week, you went off. You did what you had to. Yes, the next meeting is serendipity. If you had not said yes to doing the job the other person said no to, maybe you would never have met.
Yeah.
Right? But you said yes. Then we met. Then we consciously connected. We understood. Also, I very often find that a lot of relationships here are transactional. So, अभी मुझसे क्या काम है, रोहित से ये काम कर लो, वरुण से काम करा लो, टक टक, I'm in, I'm out. ठीक है, your work will get done.
Yeah.
But you will never end up building a relationship of value. Ranjit, who's been my CEO for the longest time, today is still executive director for all my companies in that sense, because he's the best advisor I ever get, told me that 24 years ago, he was editing a film for us at Encompass, early days of Encompass. We didn't know who to get to make, and he used to make films in Delhi. And it was his anniversary. And I just asked him for his address and sent something for him and his wife, saying, I know you're editing on the night of your anniversary. Just what? Usko aaj bhi, when we talk sometimes, it's the small things that end up mattering to some degree. So I in fact was watching the Dhruv Sehgal bit or whatever, and you half said that phrase, because I keep saying it on the way. Be interested or be interesting. Be interested. I was so interested in knowing what you wanted to do, what Rohit wanted to do, why you wanted to do it, why the glitch, everything, right? And जब वो genuine interest होती है ना, तो and it gets recorded somewhere, those things happen. But if you didn't say yes to X number of things, there won't be enough connections for you to build that serendipity.
Is that Maya Angelou line, right? Is that people won't forget what you said. People forget what you said, what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I feel in essence, we oftentimes forget that in the transactional nature of things. Like you said, if you go in, so what is this person's agenda? What is my agenda? Let's complete agendas and move on. But if you're genuinely sharing a way that makes the other person feel something, then that's you building that chord, right? I think and at some point, I don't know if you can do that online. I feel it is an in-person thing, has been my big learning, I think, that the last 1 year. Because when the pandemic happened, I honestly felt that you could build enough of these connections online, and I didn't have to have a human connection as much as I used to have. But I think the last 1 year has reinforced in my head that when we do this the way we are doing it versus doing it, let's say, on a screen, there is something that gets missed in the way to connect and really like bond with someone. Do you agree? Do you feel that's the case?
I feel that online connections, they removed distance, right?
Yeah.
You were no longer dependent on, I know X who's sitting in London, I can connect right away. Right? So the windows to so many other worlds opened up for us.
Yeah.
What that brought with it is overconsumption. Right? Why did audio podcasting rise during the pandemic? Because there was so much visual stimulation that we react. After a while, it was like, shut this off, I just want to hear.
Yeah.
So that's why it went up.
Yeah.
Right? So everything has to be looked on in its overall thing. So we made more connections, but did we make deeper connections?
Yeah, that's a question.
Right? Now, the deeper connection, while I used to have a pen pal in 1986, right? We used to write letters every week. He was the debating team head from Calcutta. I was the debating team head from Lucknow. And we just loved words.
Yeah.
And I remember even in the debate, which was the physical meeting that we had, he was absolutely brilliant. I played on, we were both very, very good. We sparred beautifully. I know, and those letters were things in those days. I even today I sometimes look back and say that we used to look like we used to be waiting.
Yeah.
Kab aayega? Because they were written with a lot of care. There was a lot of attention. You knew you had 3 pages that you would write. What would you write? What would you not write? Right? Now what's happened is we are given mediums that have infinite boundaries.
Yeah.
You can have a playlist that is never ending. You will never appreciate the power of a mixtape. Because a mixtape was 90 minutes. You used to calculate mathematics हम लोग करते थे ना.
Correct.
ये गाना 323, ये वाला 445, इसको जोड़ेंगे, ये करेंगे तो इतने
That
गाने
is the
fit
one
होते हैं.
thing I miss the most from the
Right?
analog times is the mixtape.
Yeah. So just the fact of finite choice versus infinite choice. So during things that are virtual, we get infinite choices,
Yeah.
which leads to this confusion.
Which also leads to no choice.
Right, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Confusion. What do I go for? All of this. But I think what you need is a mix of the virtual and the physical. I'm very happy every day that I get to see you on virtual, which takes away a little bit of my, I haven't seen Varun for the longest time.
Yeah.
But I still crave the shooting the breeze, no agenda, we'll meet,
Yeah.
we'll catch up, we'll bump into each other. You know, somebody turns and said, why will anybody ever want to go to a convention again?
Yeah.
Right? But everybody wanted to. And they were like, why? And they
For
said
the
there were
time
2
pass
reasons.
bits.
So that's the 2 reasons. One reason was the serendipity of the meeting that you never planned. The person you bumped into in the aisle. Oh my God. Right? So many people in your list that you'll never remember.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. The second thing was you needed to get away. Office is great, but you needed time away. Home is great, you needed time away. So I think those are some of the things that you realize. You realize over a period of time.
You mentioned debate, right? And when it comes to like public speaking and debate, I often feel like there are certain aspects that people don't get as to how to do it. The expectation is the cliched, what you see, 10 hacks to be a better public speaker scenario. What according to you are almost like best practices or things that people don't necessarily know enough of about these two?
So I think you got to separate one from the other because in terms of public speaking, the first thing is you're speaking to a large set of people. You're not having a one-to-one conversation technically. And in that case, the first thing you must know is reading the room, right? I often turn and say that when a stand-up comedian walks in and they start with, how are you doing? Where are you from? They're reading the room.
Yeah.
So can you read the room in advance? Very often when I go for engagements where I have to speak, I walk the room. And I'm walking the room because partly I'm looking at the space, I'm looking at the people, I'm going into the coffee shop to see what the people are talking about, I'm going onto Twitter and seeing what the other speakers are talking about, right? I'm virtually eavesdropping on the other people who are around. So understand what the setup is, right? Then preparation. Most people don't prepare. Right? सबको लगता है कि यार मैं तो बस माइक पे जाऊंगा and I am Sir Oracle and the minute I will start everyone will listen. ये नहीं होता है. The best of people, right?
I've done this, I know.
And it's so important. So preparation is only about, I often turn and say that the preparation can be as small as saying what are the 3 things you want to leave them with, right? And in advertising, as they always used to say it again, say it one more time.
Yeah.
So even if you just know what your 3 messages are and you'll repeat them, you will land your message. So this is the setup, then the preparation. Then I often turn and say that define an engine. And when I say an engine is, what are you going to drive? Are you driving a Rolls Royce today or a Ferrari? Right? Are you going to sprint or are you going to be going easy? And it's almost for me, because public speaking is what I have made my name and fame and money from. A lot of it is about following some of these steps. After this entire thing of finding the engine, I will often decide that today my analogy is going to be X. Right? So before coming here, why did I go and watch 5 of those small clips of yours? Because I just wanted to say, okay, what do they pull out always? That is preparation. That is also giving you respect for what you're doing, which people don't do. Right? So I think these are important things. The next thing in this entire thing along with this is, after you figured out the engine, is to go out there and figure out what is going to be your connection with the audience, which is very often engage.
Yeah.
So how do you engage? You engage by questions. You engage by telling stories. You engage by doing, quizzes. You engage by saying, how many people in this room are afraid of public speaking? You raise your hand and you see how many other people will do it or
Yeah.
whatever. This is engagement very often. The next thing is clarity, right? कहना क्या है? This tale full of sound and fury signifying nothing
Yeah.
is not what you need.
Yeah.
So clarity. Do you know? And again, very often people say, but how do I know clarity? I said, if there was a press person sitting in the room, what's the headline they would put the next day? Think of it. Think once, saying, what's the headline you want to land in the paper the next day? Right? That is what is needed to a large degree. Humor is something that many people do not realize. So humor is a great weapon only if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to use it, please avoid. Do not go.
Random jokes
down.
are not.
Don't do that. Listen. Keep listening. Listening can be visual. Listening can be from the ears. So visual listening is if people are looking at their watches, your time is up because they have lost you. If people start coughing, in theatre we were taught that if in a monologue somebody starts coughing, you've lost your audience, right? If people start looking all the way around, if they start yawning, if they start leaning back rather than leaning in.
Yeah.
Now, these I can now do because I scan the room. I'm constantly scanning the room to see what are people thinking, what are they saying, what are they doing, right? Whatever. So I think these are some of the lessons.
Yeah.
Storytelling, have stories. I hunt for stories. I have, my phone is filled with notes of stories on different kinds, small stories. What we call big S and small S storytelling, right? A small story is an anecdote.
Yeah.
But a big story is, oh my God, that was a story. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. Having that in your repertoire really does help you. And right at the end, the important thing is, summarize things. So what I've just given you is speechless.
Yeah. I was just going through that. Yeah.
This is the formula that we had made in the early days of saying what it can be. But these to me are the tenets of public speaking to a large degree.
Yeah.
Debating
Yeah.
is you want to score a point. So debating very, very early, I remember there was a Greek philosopher who said there's thesis, there's antithesis, and at the end there can be synthesis. So there I am listening actively to what you're saying, right? I'm building my points. So I have a hypothesis. I will take your thesis and I need to break it down. If I need to win, I need to break down your thesis. So I must support it with facts. I must be able to quickly pick on things that you are doing. And debating can be purely semantic, right? I mean, I remember in college debates and school debates, you were sometimes debating the and or the or the comma. Saying because of the comma being displaced in the statement made by the proposition, we are... पर वो दैट इज फॉर द सेक ऑफ डूइंग इट. अगर आपको एक्चुअल डिबेटिंग करनी है, बिकॉज देखो हमारी न्यूज़ क्या है आज, हमारी न्यूज़ डिबेटिंग है ही नहीं. वन साइडेड जज जूरी सब कुछ एक ही आदमी बन जाता है. सो ग्रेट डिबेटिंग, द आर्ट ऑफ ग्रेट डिबेट इज पॉइंट्स, काउंटर पॉइंट्स, रिबटल्स, रिस्पेक्ट सच. एंड एंड वो तो है ही नहीं. मेरे इतने सारे दोस्त हैं which were actually all my batchmates who are almost on television as your big news debaters, and I mean or the people who run the news hours and stuff. And very often, I see them playing personas there. They are not those people.
Yeah.
But they're playing a persona because they say about, a nation which is so frustrated with inaction wants in 1 hour that you convict them, you kill them, you murder them, you ferret them there. Because that's what they're acting. But that's not a debate. A debate has two viewpoints.
Yeah.
Which is important, and what you beautifully said, respect.
Yeah. I also ask you this because I feel at today's time, and you and I have spoken about the creator space a lot. I feel a creator is a mixture of many things, right? And we've covered many of those. A creator is also part entrepreneur, part business. You're also looking at balancing many things and kind of creating, the content you actually feel should be made. But you also at some point also reading the audience and making it for them. And there's also one crucial aspect which is, I feel, a question a lot of creators kind of get stuck with, is that are you a creator or are you an artist or are you an entrepreneur? And that seems to be at least the one thing I've seen most creators struggle with, because in their head, if you become too artist, then you're just going after fame. If you're going after too much of the creator, you're just running after the algorithm. If you're too much of an entrepreneur, you're the business person who just does this on the side, but everybody wants to be at the center. for me, you are a creator because you figured a way to kind of work at the center of that. So if you had to say that if there has to be a way to center all of these together, what would you say that is?
So I would redefine the artist part a bit, right? A true artist does not care for any opinion, right? You rarely find them. But I can tell you that there are people I come across whose art I do not understand, but they are not willing to offer me an explanation. They say, this is my art. This is how it is.
Yeah.
Now, I genuinely sometimes envy and respect that because, many people hide lazy creativity behind that tag.
Yeah.
But let's not, discount the fact that true artists sometimes really don't care about the monetization. They do not care about the algorithm. They do not care about, will this make me famous at some point in time? Something calls out to you dearly and you do it. That level of art is something I envy and I sometimes hope and pray I can discover. Because honestly, I have not been there. I've always been the creator who has been creating, keeping an audience in mind. Right? My weapons were great communication, great engagement, and making most people feel at home. Really, I was, when I started on radio, मैं हमेशा बोलता था कि मैं रिक्शे वाले से भी बात कर सकता हूँ, मैं CEO से भी बात कर सकता हूँ, and neither will feel out of place. Right? Which was my strength. So I built on that strength, and the creator part of it actually became about, filling that gap. What is it? So when I set up the event company, I was an anchor. I was making tons of money as an anchor. But the problem was that I was too often having to save bad events. Then I looked at it and I said, okay, let me look at this. And this is when the entrepreneur mindset comes in. As an independent creator, I could have just come, saved the day, walked off, made my money. Because I've identified a gap. There are not enough people who can engage audiences in gaps.
Yeah.
And in radio, one of our mentors had told us saying, जब शो शुरू होता है और एंड होता है, it should flow like water. तो मैं अपने दिमाग में शेयर रहता था कि भाई, is it just flowing? Is it one thing from the other? Or is it suddenly a steep turn or a left, or a drop? वो नहीं होना चाहिए. So I would always become that sutradhar, somebody who ties it all together. But the entrepreneur is when you start saying, you know what? There is a repeat business in something here. There is something that can be built, which at some stage you could move yourself out of and it will still run. So one of my biggest rules of things has been make yourself redundant. In every business I set up, I made myself redundant because if I'm the only guy who can do an event that way, it's great for me as a creator. It's very bad for me as an entrepreneur. Right? So build your own replacement. Find your own replacement. I was intrigued by digital. But when I found Rohit and you doing what I would have possibly liked to do, but was maybe too old to do or didn't have enough knowledge to do, the best way was to invest in you and let you do it. I always became, I've seen this road ahead, Varun, Rohit, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, you choose. You take that decision. The minute I would have said, I'll take the decision for you, I'm not making myself redundant. So I'm saying somewhere the artist listens purely to themselves. The creator listens to what is the opportunity. And I know the creator can be used in a million different ways or whatever. But the joy of creating for someone, for an audience, whatever, is what I would define it as in today. And the entrepreneur does this, creates the bigger gap, finds the other creators to fill that space or whatever, and moves on.
And I feel that's the clarity which I feel often gets missed, right? Because I've seen so many creators become entrepreneurs and stop being creators and suddenly be like hands-on, almost like day-to-day controlling. And they're like, I'm not able to create because I'm like, you're using all your headspace for this. Or I've seen artists turn around and say, okay, I have to do what creators do, but I can't do my craft the way I want to do it. And what you said is great. You have to choose. It's not even about choosing a lane. It's about choosing what fits what you really want in the best possible way.
And you could be all three at different points in time, Varun.
Yeah.
You could be, when you were writing the book, you could have been this or this. I believe you were more here. But, you might just stand and say, I'm just doing it for the heck of doing it. I feel deeply about doing this. That's why you're doing it, I met a very, very dear friend or whatever the other day who's known for his humor, known for his writing. Suddenly the question was, should I open a production house? And I said, do you want to be the guy who gets the call at 3 a.m. saying the grade is not right? And he was like, no.
Then
So then why would you do it?
Yeah.
Just because it makes a little bit more money.
Yeah.
And really, I do believe that the younger the people are today, the more they're looking at some amount of, everybody wants that certain amount of money, but they're also looking for a little bit more fulfillment. A little, I mean, the word purpose has become so important, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
कहाँ होता था पहले पर्पस की क्या बात होती थी, सस्टेनेबिलिटी की क्या बात होती थी, नहीं होती थी. आज इसलिए होती हैं बिकॉज दुनिया ऐसी हो गई है. I mean, it's such a broken world that either this generation needs to fix it,
Yeah.
or they need to start praying that Mars happens,
Yeah.
or whatever. But that's it. So I'm saying that all of these things started mattering a lot more to younger creators.
Yeah. I always ask my guests, what's the best piece of advice you ever gotten? I want to flip this, sir. I want to add an extra layer. What's the best piece of advice you ever gotten? But also, what is the most insightful piece you scribbled into that notepad in recent times?
I think the best piece of advice I ever got was in school from my English teacher, Elton D'Souza, who I, even today, I mean, he's no more, but I still worship, and I'm so grateful and thankful to him and my parents for becoming what I did. Because one gave me the freedom to do what I want, the other gave me the tools to do what I want. And I remember that initially there was this whole thing of, in your mind, should I stay in Lucknow? Should I continue doing what I am? I'm a king in this little pond. I'm the big fish, in the small pond kind of thing or whatever. And I was thinking. And he told me at that point in time that there are very few people who are given that gift of being able to go and do. And I used to revere him. And he took a beautiful quote, which used to be, he who can does, he who cannot preaches. Right? And because he knew the joke was on him, we cut out the pre and put down teaches.
Yeah.
Because, like he says, I'm teaching because I'm living in this little world. He says, but you are destined to go out and do more. And that was something which at that moment in time, it may not be the most pithy, great advice in the world, but at that moment in time, it was the advice that I really needed, that go out and do.
Yeah.
And this thing of being called a doer all my life, I think it just stems from that beginning at some level. The other thing which is scribbled, and I mean, it's not a recent scribble, it's a scribble that I often go back to, is this thing which I keep saying, do not mistake your net worth with your self-worth. And I keep saying that because as you move into various circles, today I'm in Dubai sometimes, I'm in India sometimes, I'm in a creator universe, I'm in a highly egocentric world, when you're dealing with films and many other things or whatever at some level. Sometimes I'm in a very, people feeling extremely vulnerable kind of world, which is the commune world very often. And in both places I find this, that, we become so often about our net worth, about our network, all of these things that are there, whatever. But ultimately, what is your self-worth is going to be so important.
Yeah.
लोग जिंदगी में प्यार और इज्जत कमाते हैं. ये मेरे माँ बाप ने मुझको बहुत पहले बोला था. और मैं वो चीज़ को हमेशा याद करने की कोशिश करता हूँ. Sometimes I get a little, too, stuck up about these things of saying, no, this is not good and you can't behave a particular way, blah, blah, whatever. I mean, that's your conditioning. But I still think that these are very important things to remember. I think the world could do with people who are a lot more loving, a lot more patient, a lot more respectful.
Yeah.
And in this hustle culture business, this thing, tread over every toe and get on to the next bit. नहीं यार. मैं बहुत बार जब इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की बात होती है ना, तो मुझसे लोग कहते हैं, that's a great investment or whatever. I said, if tomorrow this investment made you zero money,
Yeah.
and the founder called you at 3 a.m., would you take their call? Would you spend an evening with them if they were not going to make you a rupee? And that's, how I've always invested in whatever, and I'm telling you, I feel so happy about having that kind of a setup. This culture of winning, this culture of hustling, it's too much is made out of it in these last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I sometimes feel that people start taking bad behavior to mean many of these things. You know, I screwed him over and I did this. It comes back.
Yeah.
It all comes back.
Yeah.
And I can say this because I sit on the other side of, you know, half a century of experience today. And, you know, and sometimes you feel like a little wizened old owl sitting on a tree. You know, Vanita had asked me once in business standard, she asked me this thing. So I said, मुझे लगता है भीष्म पितामह मैं साइड पर एरोस के ऊपर लेट के पूरी महाभारत अब नई महाभारत देख रहा हूँ. Everyone's fighting now for their place and my followers and my this. But genuinely, sometimes it's great when you sit on the side and on the sidelines, you can see how things are, and all you really want to tell people is be a little more compassionate, caring, respectful. I mean, that's the word that you said, which is stuck in my head because it's so important.
Yeah.
Log karte nahi. And those are the important things.
No, I could keep going on. But I have a rule on this show that I always leave room for a part 2. I feel this is going to have part 2, 3 going on. But I'm so happy we could do this, and I'm so happy we could have this chat in person again in a podcast after 4 years. And I don't think we should wait for 4 more years to do another one. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, absolutely, Varun. It's wonderful to see how you have evolved. You know, and you know, from the shy person who would I don't want to, you know, to being what you're doing, like to see you be a content creator is such a beautiful thing. And you know, and for the little parts that I have played in that journey, I just feel I feel like a proud side parent on the side in a very vague way, but it's just, it really feels nice.
Thank you so much, Varun.